Well, let's talk about everything you need to know about 1984, Part 2, Chapter 2. So the beginning of this chapter finds Winston almost to the point the girl told him to come and meet her. So he had to be aware and cautious this entire trip. Since it was a shorter trip, right, he didn't need any special passes, but he knows that the patrols sometimes stop people at the railway stations and ask questions. So in Oceania, you can only go so far before people wonder, where are you going? After the train ride, he continues on a carriage that was shared by a prole family. And even though there are no telescreens, there's always the possibility, we're told, that there are hidden microphones to pick up people's conversation and sounds. But he keeps looking around just to make sure that he's not followed. Remember, the Parsons girl had followed a stranger through the country and had turned him into the patrols. When he gets to the path he was told to go to, right, he starts picking these bluebell flowers, partly to be occupied and maybe to have something for the girl. Something in his mind thinks that it'd be nice to give her a present. She comes up behind him and has him quickly come behind her to follow her, right? They have to be quiet. She leads him to a small grassy area that's kind of completely surrounded by this ring of trees. He's aware that he's pretty nasty physically and that she's young and she's strong and she's got a good figure. And they come closer and he tells her that he didn't even know at this point what color her eyes were. He's probably never really looked her much in the face or studied her. He asks if now that she sees him, if he grosses her out, but she tells him that no. He confesses his age and that he has a wife somewhere. He has this varicose vein and some false teeth. She says she doesn't care, and they start basically making out. And he's a little overwhelmed that it's happening, and he just really can't believe it. So they slow down, and they spend some time talking. He finds out her name is Julia, but she already knew that he was Winston Smith. She thinks that she's a little bit better at finding out things than he is, and asks, well, what'd you think of me before we met? So Winston doesn't want to lie, and he tells her that he hated her, and he wanted to bash in her head because he thought she was part of the thought police, right? She laughs. She thinks this is funny and that she's done a good job of fooling people, right? She thinks that the sash she's wearing of the Junior Anti-Sex League kind of makes him feel this way, and so she rips it off and then pulls out a piece of chocolate to share, right? Winston is shocked because the chocolate quality is good compared to what he can get from the party. She says that she gets it from the black market, but that she always tries to look the part of a good party member, right? So as he eats the chocolate, it brings this idea to him of a troubling memory, which he can't quite recall, which we do find out later. Winston asks Julia why she's into him being 10 to 15 years older than she is. She says it's something in his face, that she can spot people who don't quite belong to the party, and that by looking at his face, she knows he's against it. Julia talks pretty openly and harshly with a lot of swear words against the party, and this makes Winston a little uneasy, right? Because that's traitorous, but he likes her language as kind of a type of rebellion. Remember, he always wants to shout swear words against the party. They walk around outside the clearing a little. Winston sees this pasture that reminds him of the Golden Country, if you remember that from his dreams. They watch a bird land, and the bird starts whistling. You know, the sound of it kind of entrances them. They don't hear a lot of these natural sounds like this. Winston grabs her and kisses her, and they go back to the clearing where Julia strips down like in his dream. And she admits she's done this quite a bit with other party members, outer party members, which Winston actually is overjoyed that she gets around, because to him it shows corruption is inside the party and shows that there is hope to be undermining of the party and for the party to be weakened. He tells her he hates purity and goodness and wants everyone to be corrupt. She admits that, well, she's corrupt and that she adores the sex act. Winston is glad, as he thinks that desire is what's going to actually destroy the party. They get busy, if you know what I mean, and then they fall asleep. He wakes up first and watches her, kind of feels protective because she's helpless there in her sleep. He reflects that there really are not pure emotions anymore, so being with her was an act of rebellion against the party, just as much as it was about desire and feelings and love. So what do we get out of this chapter? Well, for one, we see that clearly there is plenty of party members that are not totally owned and indoctrinated by the party. Julia is one such example, so is Winston, but she's been with many others and even hints that inner party members would be willing to be with her as well. However, these rebels are quite isolated by the control of the party. They don't really know each other, so they don't come together like Julia and Winston. That's pretty unusual. This is also the start of the sexual relationship between Winston and Julia. We see that although some of it may be about attraction and maybe even love, even that is twisted a little bit or a lot of bit, right? And maybe even more than love or feelings or desire, it's an act against the party. What's interesting to note is how good and evil, right and wrong has been twisted even to Winston. He seems to accept the rules and the expectations and the activity of the party as the definition of what is really good and what is really pure. When we know from our perspective that the party is dark, oppressive, hateful, and evil. But to Winston, his actions against the party are the corrupt going against the pure, when it's really corrupt versus corrupt, bad against bad. Inside the darkness of this dystopia in 1984, what is evil and corrupt has become almost the ideal and virtuous. That's what the party's done with perception. Hope that helps. Questions, comments down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Until next time.